Whether you like me or not, one thing you can't deny is that I am a very good speaker. And if you watch my previous videos, you will quickly come to the conclusion this wasn't always the case. So communication, like any other thing, can be learned. And I've created a lot of videos along these lines. But tonight's discourse is going to be very different. I'm going to give you an intermediate level of communication. The things you will learn as a consequence of this video would prove to be beneficial, not just to now, but to the future. And in fact, you're going to learn very unique concepts. It's never been said in this fashion. And if you hear it from someone else, you know exactly where they got it from. Previously, I've shared points like journaling or reading, because no matter how good of a communicator you are, if you do not understand the subject or the point of communication, you would stutter. As intelligent, charismatic, and confident as I am, if you were to ask me to discuss physics or chemistry, something along that lines, I would be at a loss, because my intellect for now is tailored towards the financial aspect, economic aspect, business, and everything within that nature. So you see, communication is not just about the joining of words to produce sentence. You have to know what you're producing. And if it was so, what is the difference between my style of communication and that of professors, where they just read a lot of books and rehearse sentences such that it sounds like a regurgitation from a textbook? There's no source, it's not interesting, the lectures are boring, you just want to go home. Yes, when you listen and sit, you hear the habitation of the XYZ, the conglomerate, and it's almost like a poem. There's nothing interesting about that style of communication. And for the purpose of this video, we would label it the professor style of discourse. I'll give you a more unique approach as touching communication. And like I said before, this is an intermediate level discourse on that subject. So if you've not seen the basics, the foundation of communication, I suggest you go watch the previous videos. And this has nothing to do with monetization or trying to improve the revenue upon that video. No. In fact, even if that was the case, I teach my staffs all the time, always create a situation where you win. To the degree in which the other person won is none of your business, as long as you won. One of the reasons that's a logical fallacy is because the investment, the degree in which both parties invested, is vastly disproportional. So trying to achieve the same result on a disproportional investment is fraud. Image, a business. The CEO risks all the capital, puts his reputation online, then organizes you to produce an outcome. Now, as a socialist, you might sit there, get angry, pissed off that the CEO, whom risks all the capital, is getting all the upside, whereas you risk nothing but your time. If the business fails, all that happens to you is you move your stuff out of the company, but someone lost millions of dollars as a consequence of a failed venture. So that's how it is in investments. He who risks, or he who has the most downside, gets the most upside. That's why as an employee, if you risk more of your time in the business, it's only a matter of time before you get noticed and rewarded for your hard efforts. But if you do what you were told to do, it is fraud to request more than what was initially agreed. Don't tempt me. This is not a business seminar. This is a discourse on communication. So let's focus solely on that subject. Communication in and of itself has its benefits. There are things I do not consider in my life. There are things that are non-existent to my mind. You know that quote where they say, if you do easy things, your life will be hard. If you do hard things, your life will be easy. Let me give you a logical breakdown. So heaven forbids, if I decide to work for someone, prepping for an interview, I don't need to rehearse. I don't need to confine myself to a script such that once they ask a question that wasn't premeditated, it becomes unsettling. Anxiety kicks in. You losing on the opportunity. Or approaching a lady, I do not consider, it's not in my mental frame to go, to gauge her status. Is she of a more higher standing? Or am I ready? Or look at myself? No, all of those are non-existent because I understand I'm interesting and charismatic enough to walk up there. I would say something she's never heard of, tie in a point quickly with history and hit it off from all the sides, and she's confused. One thing about women is they love novelty. They love something new. So when you stand out from the crowd, you're in that rare 1% where you do not communicate with filler words, or you do not ask questions while looking around, you do not break eye contact. Basic things, your life becomes easy. Your relationship to get women becomes easy. Now, we've not started the discourse, but you understand, you're intelligent enough to understand that your problems are effects. And if you've been following me long enough, you understand you do not wrestle with effects. You could not solve problems in your life by solving problems. You solve problems by finding the cause of the problem and providing solution. So wrestling with effects doesn't produce results. You find the cause and the problem naturally goes away. Could it be your anxiety, your problem, your lack of poverty, or your lack of finances, poverty, and every single thing going wrong in your life is a consequence of the absence to articulately project your thoughts in the mind of another person? Cause, effect. So if we pivot back to the business side of the communication, there could be a point you want to share, but because you lack the ability to confidently explain and convince your superiors of the validity of the ideas, once someone who is more charismatic, who is more confident, comes along and shares the same thing and steals your reward, steals the promotion, you get upset. I think every single one of us have been in situations where I said that. That is exactly what I said. Unfortunately, it was communicated with more conviction, more in-depth. That's why results were produced. So you see, this is not a one-sided problem. This is not just getting rid of a problem. This is like a hydra. It's with so many heads across various aspects of your life. And you would agree with me that the only reason you seek a promotion because you understand intelligently that a promotion invariably improves the life of every single person around you. So promotion doesn't mean your mother gets higher quality healthcare, your siblings goes to better schools. Every single thing improves as a consequence of a promotion, which is a consequence of good communication. We've not started. Good communication. So like I said, this is an intermediate level of communication. I've spoken to great extent of the reason for foundation, why foundation has to be set. Foundation and the basic concept is where you can build your erudite edifice upon. With building without foundation, you're bootstrapping, because the knowledge that should act as giant you stand upon is non-existent. So it's invariably the case you would fail. You don't fail because you're a failure or the concept applied is wrong. You failed because of the lack of foundation. So foundation is very important. Again, I reiterate, even if it was the case that monetization was the goal behind all of these videos, the thousands of dollars received as a compensation for my time, did you win? Exactly. Did you win? Exactly. One of the things I want to highlight before we go into the intricate concept is, notice my choice of words, your time. Some of you are intelligent people and you had a lot of things to do today, but you sacrificed your time because you thought this video superior to whatever activities. That is something I do not take for granted, and I have committed myself to producing valuable content that produces a vehicle to the next level. So I do not take it for granted. The first point would analyze as touching intricate level of communication. Again, I'm sensing this desire to reiterate. If you've not seen the previous levels of communication, I believe that is your first bus stop before you come to this one. You don't need to feel bad just because you're an amateur. Nobody started perfect. If you watched my day one video, you would invariably agree. And in fact, the video from 2 years, inshallah, would be much more better. We do not plateau, we do not settle. We always understand that there is more height, there is a better way to do this. There's a better way to do this. So, watch those videos. Take advantage of it. They are free. I'm not selling it to you. Invest your time and you will be fine. So the first concept is tonality. Tonality is very important as touching communication. One of the secrets of communication, if you watch any good communicator, any communicator you aspire to become, any communicator you enjoy his content, enjoy his information. In fact, actors aren't just judged based upon performance or metrics like body language, expression, but it's the ability to communicate the emotion matching the speech. So when it's time to cry, they don't cry in a motivational voice or in a bold voice. Their emotions matches their speech. So that's why I highly recommended you should check out the previous videos if you've not. So emotions is one thing, speech is another. The ability to vary your emotions to capture the feeling of that discourse. And if you've noticed, as a result of this content, I have varied my emotions across various talk. So there are times where I increase my pitch to communicate passion. There are times where I'm slow. There are times where I'm normal. There are times where I speed it up a little bit. There are times where I go on a rant. So all of this is a deliberate practice to produce the best kind of video. Do not think it's arbitral. And that's the problem I have with people. They have this wrong mindset, especially poor people. They have this wrong mindset that everything's going to work out, that I'll just do it and I'll walk and I'll meet someone somewhere and life will be prosperous. Doesn't work that way, sir. Doesn't work that way. Doesn't work that way. That's the exact reason you are poor. So tonality, the ability to vary your tonality to communicate passion, the ability to capture the ability to phrase your speech, to capture the feeling of the moment is tonality. Tonality is very important. One thing said in two different ways can mean two different things. If I ask you, what are you doing tonight? Why are you asking? But what are you doing tonight? You see, it's more interesting. In fact, my go-to strategy as touching these things, when I have someone over, I casually interject or I tailor the conversation to match this finishing blow. I say, the FBI negotiation team conducted a study to get something from someone that's withholding. It is true, I get up, walk to the table, pick up a bottle of water. It is through rapport and kindness. Do you want water, sir? Now smiling. Exactly. So that same sentence said in a stretch, said immediately, would not prove or would not produce the desired outcome. So tonality is one thing you need to understand. Tonality is something you need to pay attention to. Like I said, life is not arbitrary. Disregard this somehow mindset. I'll meet someone somewhere, and something would happen. I'm not valueless. There's nothing I'm not doing. I have no investment. There's nothing I'm doing to improve my life currently. But somehow I'll be prosperous. It doesn't work that way. So that first thing is tonality. The second is to be able to deal with this unfamiliar feeling. Unfamiliarity of this new idea. You can pass this argument and it's divided into two components. The first, the ability or the desire to conform to people's various or former perception of you. The second is the uncertainty. Maybe I should separate this concept. The uncertainty of whether this is working or that is working. You've not seen it in action before. So let's touch the first one. It's relatively easy. People who used to know you have a description of you. And once you go against that description, they would always try and relate with you based on that image, forcing you to conform. Now, this is where things get interesting. If you can sit in that rare 1% and refuse to go back to that previous life, refuse to conform to the ideals, then you can attain a very high echelon of power. So that's the first one, the desire to conform to other people's former perception of you. The second is uncertainty as to whether this is working. So uncertainty, in fact, the only reason you want to try and improve your communication, one of the various reasons, is the desire to erode anxiety. So once you're uncertain about a particular line of action, there's no conviction, which then produces anxiety. You see how all of these are interchangeable and connected. Interchangeable substitutes for us. Connected substitutes interchangeable. All of these are connected. So your anxiety might not be a cause or might not be the effect of the cause you formally ascribed it to. It might be a cause of the uncertainty of this new course of action. Is it working? Is it not? And you're fidgeting. In fact, to implement a level, a variance of tonality takes confidence. It takes confidence, because once you do something unfamiliar, your mind tells you to suppress. When it's time to raise your voice, your mind tells you you're failing, or don't do this, you're shouting, people are going to do X, Y, Z. So it takes a degree of confidence and believe in yourself to produce that result. And for this reason, I told you it's going to be intermediate. I told you it's going to be difficult. Again, if you've not seen the previous videos, do check it out. There's a lot of basic things that you need to hear. But if you've gotten to the point where you can speak and you're comfortable in your own skin, you don't care about people's opinions, you have a degree of confidence and belief that this is for you. So the 2 steps, tonality and how to deal with uncertainty and unfamiliarity. So usually, in fact, not usually, previously, when I would experience uncertainty in my speech, I had no one to give me the correct interpretation of that feeling. To me, I interpreted it as failure. This is not working, or I've tried. No, but for the sole reason, I take stock of my efforts. I watch these videos back and look for various ways on how to improve them. Then I saw it was working, of which I doubled down on that effort. You see? So uncertainty, again, everything is in the subconscious. Very recently, I know a guy who was building a house. He was so excited because this is one of those things where finances are not too available, especially in places like this. So this guy, building his first property, in an attempt to save costs, he did something very interesting. The doors that would be used for the property, he carried it upon his head from the supplier down to the property. Yes, of course, there's a place where transportation stops, but there's a place where indeed transportation stops. The road wasn't that motorable. And I know my foreign friends will find it very hard to believe, but yes, there are places like that. There are houses you live of which you can't park cars. So he would carry the door on his head where the car stops to his property, and you see him doing this excited, greeting people on the way, not ashamed of what he was doing. But conversely, someone who does this as a consequence of labor is upset. So the same activity, different reaction, subconscious mind. So sometimes you might be doing something right, but the mind convinces you otherwise. You have to sit and believe in your effort, believe that what you're doing is correct. So once the course of action is determined and you're riding, there'll be a lot of obstacles, a lot of things in attempts to confuse you. If you look at the Bible, one of the primary ways to stop effort is through confusion. The story of the Tower of Babel, when those men set their hearts that this is exactly what we're going to do, God came down and said nothing will be restrained for them which they have desired to do. And how did they stop them? Through confusion. So it's the same thing with you when you're doing something worthwhile. Confusion of whether this is working or it's not worth my time, it's not worth my effort, you should stop, go the route of mediocrity. That is exactly what you're going to hear. So my friends, believe and you'll be fine. So check out the previous videos, and as always, my friends, pleasure speaking to you. I'll see you in the next one.